Drip, 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 drip. Every day we're hearing a new story. I mean, that sounds gross, but like, if, you know what I mean. From a journalistic perspective, there's a lot coming out about Clarence Thomas and his just cartoonish corruption. I mean, in other countries, people go to prison for the kind of stuff that we're seeing coming out about Clarence Thomas. We can barely get a hearing. I was reminded by Ronald Reagan on Twitter the other day that we did get a hearing when I was out on Wednesday, but it was so unforgettable that I didn't even remember it. I'd completely forgotten about
Forgettable,
it.
not.
Because Dick Durbin doesn't want to do his job.
Yeah, the most memorable thing that we talked about on Wednesday was, former Bush Attorney General Michael Mukasey being like, "You think I'd potentially sacrifice a beautiful friendship by refusing to go on a private jet?"
Right. I
would never do that.
That's, again, I did remember that. That was some questioning from John Ossoff and, former Bush Attorney General there, basically saying that it would be very uncouth. I mean, Emily Post would not approve of turning down gifts.
It's not proper decorum.
Not proper. Again, it would be like stabbing Emily Post. That's how against manners it would be. Hilarious. I wish I had friends like this that just, gave me millions of dollars on a whim, or tens of thousands, as we're seeing in this instance through different channels, which is a way to hide and obscure the literal corruption that we're seeing right now. So, of course, Clarence Thomas, it's been over the past few weeks, discovered that Harlan Crow, the billionaire real estate Club for Growth benefactor, has taken Clarence Thomas on yacht vacations, on his private jet, given him expensive historical memorabilia, including Frederick Douglass's Bible, among other things.
This is from ProPublica. Clarence Thomas had a child in private school. Harlan Crow paid the tuition.
That too.
And
ProPublica's been on this, by the way.
Pretty interesting that the left all of a sudden wants kids to take out student loans just because of who their parents are.
Weird.
I know. I mean, Pell Grants or Harlan Crow. These are the institutions that America's decided are appropriate for funding people's education. But again, more keeps coming out. And now, since ProPublica's been on this, you get these legacy outlets like the Washington Post now doing some digging. And they found that Leonard Leo, who is a longtime Federalist Society bigwig, paid Ginni Thomas off the books through Kellyanne Conway and a nonprofit there, specifically said, keep Ginni's name out of this. At least $80,000 that we know about. And at least one of the payments was through Kellyanne. Now, this was in around 2012, so like 10, 11 years ago. For me, this feels like money laundering, but we've legalized so much corruption in America that it's really just hard to tell. However, Kellyanne Conway went on TV yesterday. I guess this was on Fox News with Martha McCallum here, right?
Sorry, this was this morning. Actually.
Oh, this morning.
This is Dana Perino.
Dana Perino.
One of the,
One of the blonde women. Okay, I'm sorry.
McCallum is coming up. That's why you were confused.
I'm not trying to racially profile her, but I get confused sometimes.
It's a carousel. Spin the wheel. Which one's coming?
All right, so one of the ladies.
Those stylists just do the same thing every time.
I mean, truly. Look, I'm not into fashion, but they all do this. It's the same makeup and same hair too.
Like, look at McCallum in the bottom corner. And
that's what confused me.
Exactly.
Like the soft beachy waves, the intense contour eyeshadow, eyeliner, all that. Like I'm terrible at makeup, but I don't want to look
smoky eye.
Yeah, right.
It has to be house style. It has to be Fox house style.
Oh, of course, they definitely have somebody in house that does this, and like
she's mailing it in.
Also, the same person that does the fashion on The Bachelor, by the way, and the makeup. Anyway, so here we go. Kellyanne Conway was asked to respond this morning on Fox. Here it is.
But the Washington Post this morning then has this, if you could pull it up for it. It says, judicial activist directed fees to Clarence Thomas' wife and urged no mention of Ginni Thomas, and that Leonard Leo told you, Republican pollster Kellyanne Conway, to build the nonprofit, then use the money to pay the spouse of Supreme Court Justice, but not put her name in it. I'll give you a chance to respond to that because I've seen other networks this morning really covering this as if it's big, huge breaking news.
I'm sure.
What do you say?
Well, clearly I didn't watch any of that, but this is 2011, 2012, according to the Washington Post. Leonard Leo is quoting that article. I think it's an important quote. He says, I've known the Thomases, they've been my friends since 1990, and I'm very mindful of how vicious and gossipy people can be, so I always try to protect their privacy and their safety. Viciousness from 10 years ago, 11 years ago, has turned into violence now, where people are outside of Supreme Court justices' homes trying to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh while his wife and daughters are sleeping in that home. So these people will stop at nothing. They want Clarence Thomas to resign so Joe Biden, of all people, can replace him with one of his own. In this case, Ginni Thomas was one of my contractors, and she had worked at the Heritage Foundation. She was part of the grassroots, part of the grassroots. She had worked in the Reagan administration. This is a serious person who for years had worked in public policy. And at the polling company, we did public opinion research and data analytics. We had no business before the court.
But how do you feel about being dragged into this? I mean, your name is now a part of this.
You're no stranger to that.
They love it. I'm not a stranger to that. They love to put my name in a headline. Either Kellyanne Conway or Kellyanne Conway's husband seems to be their favorite headlines. But the fact is this.
You know who doesn't want the name in the headline?
The Washington Post was looking for me all day yesterday.
Ginni Thomas.
I want to look them in the eye and tell them I'm aware that you contacted a lot of my former employees, and you suggested to one of them that you go to her home and look at her old emails. That is so beyond the pale, but that's who they are.
I mean, that sounds like good journalism.
Sounds like reporting.
Yeah, they called my former colleagues to verify this information. How dare they?
It is beyond the pale.
One little thing about the Harlan Crow, he's been friends since 1990. President George H.W. Bush nominated Thomas to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia in 1990. It's 1990, a big year for
October 23rd,
friends.
1991. Justice Thomas sworn in as the Supreme Court justice.
Wow, that's
interesting when that
when it rains
started.
it pours. You know, you're making a lot of new friends, and you're becoming one of the 9 most powerful judges in this country.
And you're putting pubes on pop cans.
It's exactly. It really is like what they say. You know, when like you're dating, and then all of a sudden you have so many options, but it was so dry before. It's like that's what it's like with Clarence Thomas. He was just a hot commodity, I guess. Kellyanne leaves out the obvious issue here, which is the failure to disclose. Like, I think all of this shit should be illegal. Payments going to our Supreme Court justices, but that's not even...
People being that rich.
Right. Or well, that too. I mean, Harlan Crow, yes, it should not be allowed to be a billionaire. There should be no billionaires. But besides that, by the letter of like U.S. law, a lot of this is allowed, unfortunately, as long as you disclose it. The point is that this was a multi-decade effort to obscure and hide these kinds of payments. In 2004, the LA Times wrote about the relationship between Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas because Thomas had been disclosing some of that stuff at that point. As soon as that article came out, Thomas stopped disclosing the payments, the trips, the gifts. In this instance here, this is like the lesson that Thomas learned and said, Ginni, just you can get paid, but just make sure it's off the books. And so Leonard Leo says, Kellyanne, we're going to make it look like this is through your consulting practice, but it's really going to Ginni Thomas, and keep her off the ledger.
And the idea that like Ginni Thomas is a serious person, no, like she's a lunatic, but she's very connected to the right wing sort of not NGO, but like think tank dark money movement. So like it's actually a real problem that a Supreme Court justice's wife is taking payments and like working with behalf of like the Heritage Foundation and all these other things, which are frankly like against American democracy.
Right. Exactly. I mean, she doesn't even buy her own BS here. She understands that she's got.
This is somebody who moves money for billionaires.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, I need to like go. This is part of that job.
Right.
And so you need to like perform for the PR purpose of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't that her job always. This
exactly.
is her. Right. So let's not
gun for hire.
Exactly.